Welcome to Blessed Be the Breakdown, the podcast where I dissect the Handmaid's Tale and uncover the real-world parallels that make it all the more terrifying. Today, we're diving into the 4th episode of Season 6, and just a heads up, this episode is packed with spoilers, so if you haven't caught up yet, I definitely recommend watching the episode first and then coming back. So let's dive in. Episode 4, Promotion. We start this episode out in no man's land, and honestly, Mayday's got themselves a pretty impressive compound. I mean, this place is huge. Now, the opening shot we get of June, you can just tell that June is quietly judging everything going on and everyone around her. Her face is just looking disgusted or mad, or something's going on with her. Luke, however, is seeming to be fully on board with everything that Mayday is doing. He even explains to June how Mayday's planning to plant bombs to kick off an attack on Gilead, but you can see it all over June's face. She's not buying it, she's not into it, and it's right around this time when they're having this conversation that Tuello actually comes in and lets them know that the charges against Luke have been dropped. But unlike June, Luke doesn't seem all that excited about the news. Once again, we see them standing in two very different places. June's ready to go back to Alaska and focus on rebuilding their little family, while Luke's clearly ready to stay and fight. Meanwhile, over in Gilead, we see Lawrence having a conversation with Angela, talking about his late wife. It's clear he's slowly starting to warm up to his new daughter, but then Naomi walks in, who's doing her best to flatter him, even leaning in for a kiss at one point, to which he swerves hard. I mean, we all know that he is clearly still in love with his wife from before. And I don't think that'll ever change. I think he's always going to love her. Naomi's never going to get what she thinks she's going to get from Commander Lawrence, even if she threatens him, I think she's going to have a little bit of a hard adjustment realizing how Lawrence is. In this scene, we also learn that Lawrence is about to become a high commander. And Naomi makes it a point to point out that high commanders rely on their virility for power. And if you're unfamiliar with that word, it basically refers to the strength, energy, and sex drive and just overall manliness, the whole package basically. So she's basically saying you're gonna have to step up and be a man if you want to be a high commander. But of course Lawrence retorts and says he's going to build his power on reform. And this is what I was talking about a while ago. But if you followed this show, you already know Lawrence has always avoided the ceremonies and anything that would disrespect his late wife. And we see that continue here. Like I said, I don't think he's ever going to change, and that's ever going to change unless he's literally forced to, like we've seen before in the past. But even then he didn't. Well, I guess he had to, but my point is that I don't think it's going to change unless somebody makes him. Back in no man's land, June's packing up her things and she's clearly getting ready to head back to Alaska. But Luke stops her and drops the bombshell that he's staying and he's the one who's going to deliver the explosives to Gilead. I mean, we see him really stand his ground. He's telling her, she's had her chance to fight and now it's his turn to fight. He wants to fight for Hannah and this is his way of doing so. June immediately pushes back, pointing out that the original plan fell apart. And here she's referring to when they went to the amusement park and Nick and June had to go save them. So, I mean, she's rightfully a little hesitant. But she also knows that Gilead is unpredictable, and she's convinced the people of Mayday, who are just civilians, don't stand a chance. Their plan in her eyes is just a complete mess. After that conversation, Luke walks away, and when June tells him I love you, he says it back, but you can just feel it. It's that kind of I love you you say mostly to avoid an argument, not because you're actually feeling it or meaning it. And you can just see that on his face. He's clearly pissed off, and rightfully so. He has a plan. He's been working on this, putting a lot of effort into it, and it feels like June is just shutting him down. And I can get June's perspective. She wants their family together. But I also see his perspective where it's his opportunity to fight. He's put together this plan, and he's been working so hard with Mayday to get it to come to fruition, and it kind of feels like she just shat all over it. Now, switching gears, we see Rita arriving to New Bethlehem, and it turns out that Serena and Nick were the ones to actually set this up just so Rita could see her sister. So Serena's clearly, like I said, just on that redemption arc, trying to do anything she can, any good she can to feel a little better about herself, I think. And the reunion with Rita and her sister was so wholesome. I'm not gonna lie, I got a little teary. I have cried, I think, more in these first 4 episodes than I have throughout the last 5 seasons of this show. But one thing I did notice is you can clearly see that Gilead is using these emotional reunions to lure people back as well. Right after this, we get the scene where Ellen, the Mayday leader, or I think she's the leader, is giving her big speech about their plan, and June just tears it apart. June throughout this episode really gets back to the vibe that she knows best, and she thinks that nobody is going to get things right but her. That is just the vibe she is giving. She tells them flat out they're not even making it past step 1. She also calls out their plan to hit Jezebels, saying that they will put all of the women there in danger, and worse, they don't even have a plan to get those women out. Now, I mean, she's right about that. Like, I think they were kind of blindly going in there, not even thinking about that, and we see they're totally willing to sacrifice these women at Jezebels, and that is just kind of shitty of them. Like, I get people are gonna get lost in war, but like, if you even have the chance to think of a way to save them, maybe try, and it doesn't seem like they put that much effort into thinking of a way to save these women. Now, I will say, they said they were going to send somebody in there to warn the women of what was coming, but still, like, if they're, depending on what they're going to use, like bombs and stuff, I don't know how fast women can get out, you know? Speaking of sending somebody in there, Moira, of course, volunteers because she has been to Jezebels and gotten out before, and June does not like that at all. She is just not having it. Back in Gilead, we see Lawrence is at his promotion ceremony, and High Commander Wharton is the one doing the honors. And honestly, the synchronized praise bees gave me full-on cult vibes. Just straight up unsettling. Like, they're all wearing black. He's like being, what is it called? Like knighted or something. It's very strange and just very much giving cult. But we already know that this, Gilead is kind of cultish, but it was just like very present. We also meet Commander Bell, who is giving just huge Putnam energy. He invites the group to Jezebels for drinks, and we all know what happens at that place and what Jezebels is about. Bell is yet another example of the gross predatory behavior of Gilead's so-called leaders. We can clearly see that Commander Lawrence doesn't really want to go, but he has to go because this is for him and his, ceremony celebration or whatever. But when he tries to get Nick to go with him, Nick's father-in-law, Commander Wharton, steps in and basically saves him. I mean, rightfully, because when they're having that conversation where Belle is talking about how Commander Wharton never went with his father to these events either, and stuff like that, you can tell that Commander Wharton is more like, I think, traditional. Sort of, I want to compare it to Lawrence, but obviously not as reformed. But I definitely think he doesn't appreciate like the whole cheating and the Jezebels aspect of everything. So him saving Nick, of course, is, I think, just a savior for Nick, but it also is, him kind of stepping up for his daughter. He doesn't want his daughter's husband going to Jezebels and doing God knows what. We get more scenes with Serena and Wharton too this episode, this time at the Blaine's house, where Serena brings some pie for Rose, and her bringing pie for Rose clearly seems like kind of a ploy just to see Wharton again, maybe. At least that's the vibe I'm getting. But that's when we find out that Wharton's wife has passed away. And it really got me thinking, why hasn't he been forced to remarry yet? Because to me from that conversation, it seems like she maybe died before the whole Gilead came to play. So is it just because he is high ranking as a commander that he didn't have to remarry, or like what's going on there? Or maybe I misread that situation, but to me it seemed like she had passed away when Gilead was like coming to fruition. It is during this conversation with Serena and Wharton that they bring up Fred, and Wharton drops the line about how a better man would have encouraged her influence. And this man is really turning on the charm. This episode, we can really see him trying to get with Serena, and it's working. I mean, she is clearly falling for it and feeling flattered, and rightfully so. I mean, Fred was a big asshole, and even though Commander Wharton is still like a Gilead commander, at least he seems a little more supportive of her. Throughout this episode, you can also see June stepping into this mom role with both Moira and Luke. And at one point, she flat out tells Moira, "You're not going to go." And Moira has to remind her that she's a grown-ass woman. And honestly, I get it. June's trying to protect her, but I'm glad Moira stands her ground, telling her she's done living June's life for her. And I mean, if we're thinking back, Moira really did have to step in and be June. She had to be there for Luke. She had to take care of Nicole. So I can see her feeling like she wants to finally be free and do her own thing. And while that conversation's happening, a picture of Janine comes through, confirming for June that Janine is at Jezebels. Now this actually leads us to the scene where we see Janine unfortunately forced to sit on Commander Bell's lap as they are now all at Jezebels for Lawrence's party. And Commander Bell, as expected, is just so unbearable, making creepy comments about how she was with Lawrence before and how he didn't have her long enough to really get to know her. You can see Lawrence is deeply uncomfortable, and I don't even want to have to talk about the whole cat thing. Like, he's just a horrible person. And I'm really hoping when Mayday finally carries out their plan that Commander Bell is sitting right there at Jezebel's, because he deserves whatever's coming to him. So Commander Bell basically tells Lawrence he can take Janine since he didn't have the chance to enjoy her before. So Lawrence and Janine go have a private moment in this room. He assures her they're not going to do anything. She's a little closed off at first. When he tells her she can speak, she calls him scary, and she points out that he's the reason that she's stuck there. He tries to pass the blame onto Naomi, which I mean is true. And Janine doesn't hold back. She calls Naomi a cunt. Honestly, I'm loving these little digs at Naomi. She's just so insufferable, clearly more interested in status than actually being a mother. She's just like so mean to Angela at some points, and like it's just like, why have a kid if you don't want to take care of it? A kid that you didn't even really have, you kind of just stole. So there's that. But we also see Lawrence show Janine, or give Janine, the picture that Angela drew for him, and they share a kind of heartfelt moment. He promises to do what he can to keep Angela safe when Janine points out that bad things happen to Commander's daughters too. And honestly, I loved this scene. We're finally getting some scenes with new character pairings and deeper connections this season. It's really refreshing to see because we have never really, other than small little scenes, seen Commander Lawrence and Janine interact. So it was just nice to see. Another conversation we get that we haven't typically got is between Nick and Rita, where they're talking about her possibly coming to New Bethlehem. And she mentions how when she first met Nick, he was just a kid. And now he is here, and now he is this. And that was her referring to him now being in New Bethlehem and being a commander. This is when Nick tells her it's the safest place to be and the safest thing to be. And we clearly see he is doing all of this to be in a position where he can protect the people he cares about. And I mean, I think we've always known this, but once again this season, it's like they're really just putting things we've known straight in our face. And ultimately, Rita agrees to come to New Bethlehem because she is still so focused on her family, and Nick promises to work on getting them out. But he also tells her it could take a year or two, which she will gladly wait because she states she's already waited this long, which is true, and I would probably wait too. Now, would I go back to New Bethlehem or to New Bethlehem in general? Probably not. But if it were to get my family back, then yes, I would. And Nick's loyalty to the people he loves has been so consistent, and I respect that about his character. And that's just the point I brought up earlier too, like we clearly see what he's doing to try and get these people that he cares for in better positions or to help these people. And that says too a lot about his character arc, and I think how he is also trying to redeem himself for his wrongs that he's done in the past. A little later on, June decides to take it upon herself to go up to Ellen and tell her that she will be taking Moira's place in the mission. And the second she makes that call, you just know Moira's going to be furious. And sure enough, the moment Moira finds out, she storms right up to June while she's talking with Luke. This is where June's "I have to save everyone" complex really shows. She just can't seem to accept that other people can make their own choices. Luke and Moira both call her out on it, especially Luke, who tells her that the way she's treating them is downright infantilizing. And he's right. This whole conversation feels like a mother scolding her kids, trying to protect them whether they like it or not. June insists they don't understand the danger and wouldn't survive. And Moira fires back. You think that little of us? Luke finally tells June that this isn't about them, it's about June and what she wants, and honestly, that's been the theme with her from the very beginning. She is always wanting to be the one in charge, and she has trouble not being in charge or letting other people lead, or not having some form of control over the people around her. One thing I forgot to write down that I wanted to talk about, but is when June, during this conversation, tells Luke to, go back to Alaska and essentially take care of Holly and Nicole. And Luke says, "That's your mom, not mine. You take care of her." I just thought that was really funny. And also, like, does he not give a shit about her mom? But no, I think it was more coming from a place of, like, he's tired of taking care of things. He's been taking care of Nicole this whole time. Similar to what Moira said earlier, it's his turn and he wants to do something and he's not going to let her stop him. And we literally, see him saying that to June. In the end, he ends up telling her that if she wants to leave, she can, but it's his turn to fight for Hannah now, and he's staying. I was glad to see both Luke and Moira standing their ground. June really needs to realize that it's not always her way or the highway. We wrap up with Serena and Wharton strolling through New Bethlehem, and they even start dancing right there in the street. He's really laid it on thick, reminiscing about how he noticed her before, but didn't want to disrespect Fred, and now he is blatantly making his move on Serena. However, that is short-lived because Aunt Lydia randomly shows up. And honestly, I was so confused by this because I thought she was still back at the Red Center in Gilead, but maybe she's living in New Bethlehem now. I'm kind of confused about that dynamic because if there's no handmaids in New Bethlehem, why is she in New Bethlehem? So maybe that will be cleared up next episode, but I was kind of confused about that. And we end this episode with a conversation between Luke and June where Luke essentially suggests that they team up and they do it together. The offer really breaks through all the tension that's been weighing them down this episode, and June finally lets her guard down, and through tears, she admits how impossible finding Hannah still feels. Luke points out that their family might never be the same again, but he reminds her that against all odds, he got her back. And even if this mission doesn't bring Hannah home, they have to try. They end the episode saying, "I love you," and this one seems more genuine than the one before because nobody's pissed off and they now seem to be on the same page. So we're ending their little storyline in this episode on a good note. Overall, I thought this episode was packed, but in a good way. I'm loving that we're getting more time with these characters, especially new pairings like Lawrence and Janine and Nick and Rita. I'd much rather the final season feel jam-packed and satisfying than to end with a bunch of loose threads of regrets. Now let's get into some real-life parallels. Let's start with the incident involving Nicole Micciarone, a Massachusetts immigration attorney. Micciarone, a U.S. citizen, mistakenly received a notification stating that her parole status had been terminated and that she should leave the country within 7 days. This situation mirrors how Gilead enforces oppressive control over its citizens, even targeting those who are legally in their position. The unsettling feeling of being targeted despite your rights is reminiscent of the constant fear and control experienced in Gilead. In an interview with 10 Boston, Micciarone stated, "The letter was probably, hopefully, sent to me in error, but it's a little concerning that these are going out to U.S. citizens." This situation echoes themes from The Handmaid's Tale, where authority oversteps and individuals, despite having rightful status, are unjustly threatened or targeted. While this may have been a mistake, it's concerning that the government isn't being more careful. Just last week, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt mentioned that Trump was interested in deporting heinous violent criminals who are U.S. citizens to El Salvador if there's a legal pathway to do that. Now, some may argue that criminals deserve this treatment, but there are two key issues here. One, it's hypocritical coming from Trump, who's repeatedly said that other countries are sending their criminals here, yet now seems to want to do the same thing. Two, it opens a frightening door. Who's to say that after deporting criminals, he won't try to target other citizens based on factors like their sexual orientation or reproductive choices? I'm not claiming this will happen, but once that door is open, it's hard to know what could follow. This fear mirrors The Handmaid's Tale's exploration of how Gilead's power grows incrementally. What begins as a targeted effort against criminals or enemies of the state quickly expands to anyone who fails to conform to the regime's strict roles. The same pattern could easily unfold here, with the government shifting its focus from criminals to individuals whose identities or beliefs challenge those in power. Once personal freedoms start eroding under the excuse of protecting the state, history shows it rarely stops there. Another recent example is the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland resident with legal protection from deportation due to threats from gangs in El Salvador. Despite this, he was mistakenly deported and imprisoned in a notorious Salvadoran facility. The Trump administration acknowledged the error but resisted efforts to bring him back, citing alleged gang affiliations without providing concrete evidence. This incident underscores how administrative oversights can lead to severe consequences, especially when due process is overlooked. Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen traveled to El Salvador to advocate for Kilmar Abrigo Garcia's release, but was denied access to him. The case highlights serious concerns about due process and failures within the U.S. immigration system. Meanwhile, the Salvadoran president, during a visit to the White House, made it clear he won't return Abrigo Garcia to the U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi also stated, quote, "It's up to El Salvador to decide whether he is released from prison." One last parallel I have is the Title X funding freeze that threatens reproductive health access. In The Handmaid's Tale, Gilead didn't take away women's rights all at once. It started by quietly cutting off access, closing clinics, restricting medical care, freezing bank accounts, and rewriting laws. This Title X funding freeze feels eerily similar. It doesn't outright ban birth control or reproductive health care, but it chokes off access, especially for low-income women and rural communities, making reproductive freedom practically impossible. In both Gilead and reality, the strategy isn't always a loud declaration of control. It's slow administrative erosion that leaves people without choices. First, clinics disappear, then rights fade, and before you know it, the government controls your body, not you. As June says in the show, "Now I'm awake to the world. I was asleep before. That's how we let it happen. When they slaughtered Congress, we didn't wake up. When they blamed terrorists and suspended the Constitution, we didn't wake up then either. They said it would be temporary. Nothing changes instantaneously. In a gradually heating bathtub, you'd be boiled to death before you knew it." Now, episode 4 really gave us a lot. The character depth, the shifting relationships, and the way all these storylines are finally starting to collide. I'm especially loving the interactions we don't usually see, like Lawrence and Janine, and how everyone's choices are pushing the story forward. Gilead's changing, the risks are higher, and I honestly can't wait to see where it all leads. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so come chat with me on YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok. And thanks for hanging out with me for this breakdown. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and leave a rating. It really helps more people find the podcast. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay sharp, and as always, blessed be the fight.